You know, I never thought a walk in the woods with my dog could turn my entire world upside down. But that day, God, it's like it's burned into my soul. My name's Emily, and this is the story of how my police dog Max saved me from a secret so dark, it still gives me chills. I'm not sure I'd even be here telling you this if it wasn't for him. So, grab a seat, because this is going to take you somewhere you won't expect. I'd moved to this quiet little town in upstate New York about a year ago, chasing a fresh start after a messy breakup. The place was perfect. Small, cozy, surrounded by forests that stretched on forever. I'm a freelance graphic designer, so I could work from anywhere. And I thought, why not somewhere peaceful? I rented this cute cabin just outside town. Nothing fancy, but it had a big yard for Max. He's a German shepherd, retired from the local police force. I adopted him when his handler moved away, and let me tell you, Max is my rock. Those big brown eyes, they see right through you like he knows your secrets before you do. Life in the cabin was good at first. I'd wake up to birds chirping, sip coffee on the porch, and Max would sprawl out in the sun, chasing squirrels in his dreams. The neighbours were nice enough. There was Mrs. Larson, who'd wave from her garden, and Tom, this grizzled guy who ran the hardware store and always had a story about the old days. Everyone seemed to know each other, and they welcomed me like I'd always been part of the town. It felt safe. Like I'd finally found a place to belong. But then maybe 6 months in, I started noticing things. Little things, you know. Like, I'd take Max for walks in the forest behind my cabin. It's this huge stretch of pines and trails that locals use for hiking. Max loved it, bounding ahead, sniffing every tree like it was a new adventure. But sometimes he'd stop dead in his tracks, ears up, staring into the trees. At first, I thought it was just deer or maybe a fox, but it wasn't like he was curious. It was like he was on guard. His hackles would raise, and he'd let out this low growl that made my stomach twist. I'd call him back, and he'd come, but he'd keep looking over his shoulder, like something was out there. I brushed it off. City girl nerves, right? The woods are creepy when you're not used to them, but it kept happening, more and more. One evening, we were out later than usual, and the sun was dipping low, painting everything orange. Max froze again, but this time he didn't just growl. He barked, sharp, urgent, like he was warning something off. I looked where he was staring, and I swear, for a split second I saw a shadow move between the trees. Not an animal. It was taller, human-shaped. My heart was pounding, but I told myself it was probably just a hiker. People used those trails all the time. I called Max and we hightailed it home. That night, I locked every door, checked every window, and Max slept right by my bed, closer than usual. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was out there wasn't just passing through. It felt like it was watching us. Over the next few weeks, I tried to stick to my routine. Work, walks, groceries, repeat. But the forest started feeling different. Heavy, almost. Like the air itself was holding its breath. I'd catch myself glancing over my shoulder even in broad daylight. Max was on edge too. He'd pace by the back door, whining sometimes like he wanted to go out there and deal with whatever was bugging him. I started avoiding the deeper trails, sticking to the ones closer to town. But even then, I couldn't shake this dread. Then came the first real clue. One morning, I was cleaning up the yard and I found something weird by the fence, a cigarette butt half buried in the dirt. I don't smoke, and none of my neighbours did either, as far as I knew. It looked fresh, like someone had been standing there, maybe watching the house. I told myself it could have been a delivery guy or something, but Max wouldn't stop sniffing that spot. He growled at it like it was a threat. I bagged it up, feeling like an idiot for playing detective, but I couldn't let it go. That same week, I started hearing noises at night. Not loud, not obvious, but enough to make me sit up in bed, straining to listen. A twig snapping, a faint rustle. Once, I could have sworn I heard footsteps crunching on the gravel path behind the cabin. Max heard it too. He'd bolt to the window, barking like crazy, and I'd fumble for my phone, ready to call 911. But every time I looked outside, there was nothing. Just darkness and trees. I was starting to feel like I was losing it. Was I imagining things? Was the breakup still messing with my head, making me paranoid? I even asked Tom at the hardware store if there'd been any weirdos around town, and he just laughed, said the woods make everyone jumpy at first. Mrs. Larson told me to get a security camera, so I ordered one online, but it wouldn't arrive for a week. In the meantime, I kept Max close and I stopped going into the forest alone. Then, one night, everything changed. It was late, maybe 2 a.m., and I woke up to Max growling. Not loud, but deep, like he was trying to stay quiet. He was by the back door, hackles up, staring into the dark. I grabbed my flashlight and crept over, my heart hammering so loud I could barely think. I flicked on the porch light, and for a second, I saw it. A figure. Just beyond the tree line, standing there. It wasn't moving, just watching. Max went nuts, barking and scratching at the door, and I screamed, "Who's there?" The figure turned and vanished into the trees. I called the cops, shaking so bad I could barely dial. They came, searched the yard, but found nothing. No footprints, no cigarette butts, nothing. They said it was probably just a kid messing around, but I could tell they didn't believe me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with Max, a kitchen knife in my hand, waiting for dawn. The next morning I was a wreck, but I couldn't stay locked inside forever. Max needed his walk and I needed answers. So I grabbed his leash, my phone, and a can of pepper spray, and we headed out. Not deep into the forest, just along the edge where I could still see the cabin. I kept telling myself I was being brave, but really I was terrified. Max was tense, sniffing the ground like he was on a mission. And then he stopped, his whole body rigid, staring at a spot in the dirt. I looked down and my blood ran cold. There, half hidden under some leaves, was a piece of cloth. A torn scrap of fabric, dark blue, like part of a jacket. It didn't belong there. It wasn't mine. And it wasn't some random trash. Max growled, nudging it with his nose, and I don't know why, but I picked it up with a stick like it was evidence. My hands were shaking as I stuffed it into my pocket. I wanted to run back home, lock the door and never come out again. But Max had other plans. He tugged at the leash, hard, pulling me toward the trees. I tried to stop him, but he was insistent, like he knew something I didn't. Against every instinct screaming at me to turn back, I followed him. We went deeper than I'd gone in weeks, the forest closing in around us, silent except for the crunch of leaves under my boots. My heart was in my throat, but Max was focused, his ears pricked, leading me somewhere. And then we found it. Tucked behind a cluster of pines, almost invisible unless you were looking, was a small clearing. In the center was a pile of stuff, cans, wrappers, a sleeping bag, like someone had been camping there. But it wasn't some hiker's setup. There were other things too. A knife, rusted but sharp, a rope, coiled tight, and photos. Polaroids, scattered in the dirt. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. They were of me at the cabin, me in town, me walking Max. My face, my life, captured by someone who'd been watching me for God knows how long. I felt like I was going to throw up. Max was growling, circling the clearing, and I realized we weren't alone. There was a rustle in the bushes, and I spun around, pepper spray in hand, ready to scream. But nothing came, just silence thick and suffocating. I grabbed my phone, no signal of course, and started backing away, tugging Max with me. We had to get out of there, had to get help. That's when I heard it. A low whistle, sharp and deliberate, coming from deeper in the trees. Max went ballistic, barking and lunging, and I ran, dragging him with me, branches snapping at my face. I didn't stop until we were back at the cabin, door locked, curtains drawn. I was sobbing, clutching Max, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. Someone was out there. Someone who knew me, who'd been watching me, planning something. And Max had known all along. I called the cops again, told them everything, the cloth, the clearing, the photos. They said they'd check it out, but I could hear the doubt in their voices. I wasn't waiting around to be a victim. I packed a bag, ready to leave for a motel, but Max wouldn't budge. He stood by the door, growling at the forest, like he was daring whoever was out there to come closer. And part of me wanted to stay too, not to hide, but to fight, to figure out who was doing this and why. What was in those woods? Who was watching me, and how far would they go? I didn't know it then, but I was about to find out. I was shaking when I hung up with the cops, my phone still clenched in my hand. Max was pacing by the door, his growls low and steady like he was ready for war. I wanted to believe the police would handle it, that they'd find that creepy campsite and whoever was behind it. But deep down, I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait. Not after seeing those photos. My face, my life, laid out like some sick scrapbook. Someone had been watching me, maybe for months, and I had no idea why. I tried to calm down, make a plan. The motel idea was still on the table, but the thought of leaving my cabin, my home, made me furious. This was supposed to be my fresh start, my safe place, and now it felt like a trap. I looked at Max, his eyes locked on the back door, and I realized he wasn't scared. He was angry, protective, like he'd tear apart anything that came near me. That gave me a spark of courage. If Max wasn't backing down, neither was I. I started going over everything in my head, trying to piece it together. The cigarette butt, the noises at night, that figure by the trees. It all pointed to someone stalking me. But who? I didn't have enemies, not that I knew of. My ex was a jerk, but he was halfway across the country, and this didn't feel like his style. I barely knew anyone in town beyond surface-level chats. Was it random? Some creep who saw me in town and got obsessed? Or was it something else? Something I was missing? I remembered what Tom had said about the woods making people jumpy. Maybe there was more to it. This town was small, full of history. And small towns always have secrets. I grabbed my laptop and started searching, looking for anything. News articles, forum posts, anything about the forest or weird stuff happening around here. Most of what I found was boring. Hiking trail maps, local wildlife, a few stories about lost campers from decades ago. But then I stumbled on a blog post, half buried in search results, titled The Watcher in Pine Hollow. It was short, written by someone who claimed they'd lived in town years ago. They talked about strange encounters in the forest, shadows that didn't move right, whispers at night, things going missing from their yard. They said locals called it the Watcher, like it was some urban legend, but they swore it was real. The post ended abruptly, like the writer got spooked and stopped updating. It was creepy, sure, but it didn't explain the photos or why someone was targeting me. Still, it stuck with me like a splinter in my brain. I didn't have time to dwell on it because Max started barking again, sharp and urgent. I jumped up, grabbing the pepper spray from the counter. The sun was setting and the cabin felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. I crept to the window, peering through a crack in the curtains. Nothing but trees and shadows, but Max wasn't calming down. He scratched at the door, whining, and I knew he needed to go out. I didn't want to, but I couldn't keep him cooped up forever. I leashed him up, my hands sweaty, and stepped outside. The air was cool, the forest eerily quiet. I stuck to the yard, letting Max do his thing, but my eyes kept darting to the tree line. Every rustle made me flinch. Then Max tugged hard, pulling me toward the fence where I'd found the cigarette butt. He sniffed the ground, then froze, staring into the woods. I followed his gaze and my stomach dropped. There, caught on a low branch, was another scrap of blue fabric, just like the one from before. I yanked Max back, my heart racing. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone was leaving these, marking their territory or maybe messing with my head. I ran inside, locked the door, and called the cops again. They were polite but sounded tired, like I was the crazy lady crying wolf. They said they'd send someone to check the woods in the morning, but that was it. Morning felt a million years away. I didn't sleep that night. I sat up with Max, every creak of the cabin making me jump. Around 3 a.m., I heard it again, that whistle, low and deliberate, like someone was out there, taunting me. Max went wild and I clutched the knife I'd kept nearby. I wasn't just scared anymore. I was pissed. Whoever this was, they were playing a game and I was done being the prey. The next day, I decided to take matters into my own hands. The cops weren't moving fast enough and I couldn't keep living like this. I waited for the security camera to arrive. It showed up that afternoon, and I spent hours setting it up, pointing it at the yard and the path to the forest. If someone was out there, I'd catch them. But I needed more than that. I needed to know who and why. I went to town, Max in tow, and started asking around. casual but pointed. At the coffee shop, I chatted with the barista, Lisa, who'd always been friendly. I mentioned the noises, the cigarette butt, keeping it vague. Her face changed, just for a second, like she knew something. She said, "Oh, the woods? Yeah, they're weird sometimes. Just be careful, okay?" It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me wonder. Tom was next. I stopped by the hardware store, asked if he'd ever heard of anything strange in the forest. He got quiet, then said, "People come and go out there, hikers mostly, but every now and then someone sees something they don't talk about." He wouldn't say more, just gave me a look like I should drop it. Mrs. Larson was even cagier. She said I should stay out of the woods altogether, that some places aren't meant for poking around. By the time I got home, I was more confused than ever. Nobody was giving me straight answers, but they all seemed to know something. I checked the camera footage, nothing yet, just squirrels and wind. But that night, Max woke me up again, growling at the door. I checked my phone, pulling up the camera feed, and there it was, a blurry shape right at the edge of the frame, moving toward the trees. Too tall for an animal, too sneaky for a hiker. I saved the clip, my hands shaking, and sent it to the cops. This time they had to take me seriously. The next morning, 2 officers showed up, a guy named Daniels and a woman, Officer Ruiz. They watched the footage, looked at the fabric scraps I'd collected, and finally agreed to search the woods. I wanted to go with them, but they told me to stay put. Max and I waited, every minute dragging like hours. When they came back, their faces were grim. They'd found the clearing just like I'd described, cans, rope, photos, all of it. But there was more. A notebook filled with dates and times tracking my routine, and a name scratched into the dirt nearby. Emily. I felt like the ground dropped out from under me. This wasn't random. Whoever this was, they knew me. And they weren't just watching. They were planning. Daniel said they'd send the stuff to a lab, dust for prints, but it could take weeks. Weeks! I wanted to scream. Ruiz was kinder. She gave me her cell number, told me to call if anything else happened. But as they left, I felt more alone than ever. That night, I couldn't stay in the cabin. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every noise a step closer to whoever was out there. I packed a bag ready to bolt, but Max wouldn't move. He stood by the door staring into the dark like he was daring them to try something. And then I heard it. Not a whistle this time, but a voice. Faint, muffled, coming from the trees. It said my name. I froze, my blood turning to ice. Max's growls turned into barks, and I grabbed the pepper spray, my phone, everything I could think of. I wasn't running anymore. I had to know who this was, what they wanted. I opened the door, Max at my side, and stepped into the yard. The voice came again, louder now, and I realized it wasn't just one person. There were 2, maybe more, their whispers carrying through the trees. I should have called Ruiz, should have waited for help, but something in me snapped. I was tired of being afraid, tired of hiding. With Max leading the way, I headed into the forest, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The woods were pitch black, the air thick with that same heavy silence. Max was focused, his nose to the ground, pulling me deeper until we reached the clearing again. It was different now. The stuff was gone. Cans, photos, all of it, like someone had cleaned up in a hurry. But there was something new. A trap door, half hidden under leaves, built into the ground. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just a campsite, this was a hideout. Max growled, circling it, and I knew we'd found the heart of whatever was going on. I wanted to open it, to see what was inside, but fear hit me like a wave. What if they were down there? What if I was walking into a trap? I backed away, pulling Max with me. And that's when I heard footsteps, fast, coming from behind. I spun around, pepper spray ready, and saw a figure lunge out of the dark. Max was faster. He leaped, tackling them to the ground, his jaws snapping inches from their face. I screamed, shining the flashlight, and there, pinned under Max, was Tom. Tom from the hardware store, his eyes wide with panic, babbling, "It's not what you think, I swear." I kept the pepper spray aimed at him, my finger itchy on the trigger. "Then what is it?" I snapped, my voice louder than I meant it to be. "You've been stalking me, taking pictures, leaving crap in my yard. Explain it!" Max growled louder, like he was backing me up, and Tom flinched, his hands raised like he thought I'd let Max tear into him. Part of me wanted to. It's not personal, he stammered. It's just the way things are here. You wouldn't understand. Not personal. My face was in those photos. My life was spread out in that bunker like a science project. I was about to lose it when I heard sirens in the distance, Ruiz and the cops. Finally, I didn't take my eyes off Tom, didn't lower the spray. Max stayed put, his teeth bared, until Ruiz and Daniels burst into the clearing, their flashlights blinding me for a second. They cuffed Tom fast, pulling him up, and he went quiet, his head hanging like he'd given up. Ruiz saw the trap door and froze, her hand on her gun. "You didn't go down there, did you?" she asked me, her voice tight. I shook my head, but I couldn't stop staring at it. It was rough, wooden with a rusty handle, like something out of a horror movie. Daniels called for backup, and Ruiz told me to take Max and step back. I didn't argue, but I wasn't leaving either. I needed to see what was down there. More cops showed up, along with a guy in a jacket who looked like he was from some special unit. They pried open the trapdoor, and the creak it made sent a shiver down my spine. A ladder led into darkness, and the air that wafted up smelled damp, like earth and something sour I couldn't place. Ruiz and the special unit guy went down first, their radios crackling. I stood there with Max, my heart hammering, waiting for them to come back. When they did, their faces were pale. Ruiz didn't say much, just told me to go home, that they'd handle it. But I saw what they brought up. A box, sealed tight, and a bag of papers, some with my name on them. I caught a glimpse of one sheet before they bagged it. A list of dates, times, places I'd been. The coffee shop, the grocery store, my own damn porch. My knees buckled and Max pressed against me like he knew I was about to fall apart. They took Tom to the station, and Ruiz drove me home. She didn't sugarcoat it. The bunker was a hub, she said, part of something bigger than one person. They'd found more than just my stuff down there. Other names, other photos going back years. "This isn't just about you," she told me, her eyes on the road. "This town's got history, and it's not the kind they put in brochures." I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My cabin, my safe little world, felt like a lie. Max stayed by me, his head on my lap, but even he was restless, his ears twitching at every sound. I kept replaying Tom's words. "It's just the way things are here." What did that mean? Was the whole town in on it? Lisa, with her nervous glance at the coffee shop. Mrs. Larson telling me to stay out of the woods. I felt like I was drowning in questions, and the answers were out there, in that forest, mocking me. The next morning I couldn't sit still. The cops had told me to stay put, but I was done waiting. I needed to know more, to understand why this was happening. I leashed Max and went to town, figuring I'd start with the one place everyone seemed to gather, the diner. It was early, the kind of hour where only truckers and old-timers are up, but the place was half full, and the air felt thick with whispers. People stopped talking when I walked in, their eyes flicking to me and then away, like I was a ghost. I sat at the counter, Max lying by my feet, and ordered coffee I didn't plan to drink. The waitress, an older woman named Barb, gave me a tight smile but didn't meet my eyes. I waited until she was close and said low, "You heard about what happened last night, right? In the woods?" Her hand froze on the coffee pot, just for a second before she nodded. "Folks are saying it's nothing new," she muttered, wiping the counter like it was her lifeline. "Strange things happen out there. Always have." "Strange like what?" I pressed, keeping my voice calm, even though my pulse was racing. Barb glanced around, then leaned in, her voice barely a whisper. "People disappear sometimes. Not often, but enough. Hikers mostly. Outsiders. Nobody talks about it. Not really. You're better off leaving it alone, hun." I wanted to grab her, shake her, demand answers, but Max nudged my leg like he was telling me to cool it. I thanked her, left a tip, and walked out, my head spinning. Disappear? Was that what this was about? Was I supposed to be next? The thought made my stomach churn, but it also lit a fire in me. I wasn't going to disappear, not without a fight. I went to the library next, a tiny building that smelled like old paper and dust. The librarian, a guy in his 60s with thick glasses, barely looked up when I asked for records on the town's history. I didn't expect much, but I figured if there was anything to find, it'd be buried in old newspapers or property deeds. I spent hours flipping through microfilm, Max curled up under the table, and most of it was useless. Town fairs, obituaries, the usual small-town fluff. But then I found something. A story from 1992 about a hiker who'd gone missing in the forest. They found his backpack, some clothes, but never him. The article mentioned local rumours about a group in the woods, people who kept to themselves and didn't like outsiders. It was vague, brushed off as gossip, but it lined up with that blog post I'd read about, The Watcher. I kept digging, and there were more. Stories every few years, people vanishing, cases going cold, nothing concrete, but enough to make me feel like I was onto something. I was so deep in it that I didn't notice the library emptying out until the librarian tapped my shoulder saying they were closing. I left with a stack of photocopies and a knot in my chest. Back at the cabin, I spread everything out on the kitchen table, trying to connect the dots. The bunker, the photos, Tom, the missing hikers. It all pointed to something organized, something hidden. But why me? I wasn't a hiker. I was just here. That night, the camera caught something again. I'd set it to alert my phone, and at 1 a.m., it pinged. I pulled up the feed and there was a figure. Not Tom, someone smaller, moving fast across the yard. They stopped by the fence, dropped something, and vanished into the trees. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my flashlight and Max. I didn't want to go out there, but I had to know. It was a note, folded tight and tucked into the dirt. I opened it with trembling fingers and the words hit me like a punch. You should have left. It's too late now. No signature, just that. Max was growling, sniffing the air, and I felt exposed, like eyes were on me from every direction. I ran back inside, locked the door, and called Ruiz. She was there in 20 minutes, her face grim as she read the note. We're moving you, Samay. Sais, he said, Aish. Tonight, pack a bag. I didn't argue. I threw clothes and Max's stuff into a duffel, my mind racing. Moving where? For how long? What about my cabin, my life? But the note had done its job. I was terrified and I hated it. Ruiz took me to a safe house an hour away, a plain little place with bars on the windows. Max paced the whole time, like he knew we weren't out of it yet. Ruiz stayed for a bit, filling me in. They'd searched Tom's house, found more evidence, maps, lists, even a journal talking about tests, and worthy ones. It wasn't just him. There were others, maybe a dozen, maybe more. Some kind of group, she said, rooted deep in the town's history. They targeted people like me, newcomers, people without ties, watching them, pushing them, seeing if they'd break. Why? I asked, my voice cracking. What's the point? Ruiz sighed, like she didn't want to say it. We don't know yet. Could be power, control, some twisted ideology. We're still digging. I felt sick. All this time I'd been a pawn in their game and I didn't even know the rules. I thought about Lisa, her nervous glance, and Mrs. Larson, her warnings. Had they been trying to help me in their own way? Or were they just as guilty? I couldn't trust anyone anymore, not even myself. The safe house was supposed to be temporary, but days turned into a week, then 2. The cops kept investigating, but it was slow and I was losing my mind cooped up. Max was my lifeline, his steady presence keeping me grounded. I'd take him for walks around the block, always looking over my shoulder, expecting that whistle or that voice calling my name. It never came, but the fear didn't leave. Then one night, Ruiz called. They'd found something else in the bunker, a second chamber, hidden behind a false wall. Inside were records, decades old, names and dates of people who'd come to the town and never left. Not all of them were dead, Ruiz said. Some had joined, become part of it, like they'd passed the test. Others weren't so lucky. My name was there too, with a question mark next to it. I couldn't breathe. A test, that's what this was? They'd been watching me, terrorizing me to see if I'd break or... What? Become one of them? The thought made my skin crawl. I asked Ruiz if they'd caught everyone, and she hesitated just for a second, but it was enough. "We're close," she said, but I heard the doubt. Someone was still out there. I didn't feel safe, not even in the safe house. I started planning to leave, to disappear for good, somewhere they'd never find me. But part of me couldn't let go. I wanted justice, wanted to face them, to make them pay for what they'd done. I was torn, and Max could sense it. He'd nudge my hand like he was saying, "We'll figure it out." Then came the night everything exploded. I was up late, reading those old articles again, when Max started growling low and urgent. The safe house was quiet, too quiet, and I realized the streetlights outside had gone dark. I grabbed my phone, ready to call Ruiz. But before I could, the door rattled, like someone was testing the lock. Max was at it in a second, barking so loud it hurt my ears. I backed away, grabbing a lamp like it was a weapon, my heart in my throat. The rattling stopped, and for a moment, I thought they'd given up. Then I heard the window shatter in the next room. I was trapped, cornered in a house that was supposed to be safe, with Max, snarling and glass crunching under someone's boots. My phone was useless. No signal, of course, because why would anything go my way? The lamp in my hand felt like a joke, but it was all I had besides Max, who was ready to rip apart whatever came through that door. I don't know how I didn't pass out from fear, but something kept me moving, kept me thinking. I wasn't going down without a fight. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, like whoever it was knew I had nowhere to run. Max's barks turned into a growl so deep it vibrated in my chest, and I backed toward the kitchen looking for anything. A knife, a pan, something better than a damn lamp. My eyes darted to the back door, but I knew it was locked, and fumbling with it would take too long. I was stuck, and they were getting closer. "Emily," a voice called, low and calm like we were old friends. It wasn't Tom. It wasn't anyone I recognized, and that made it worse. Max lunged at the doorway, and I screamed, "Stay back!" even though I knew it wouldn't do anything. The figure stepped into the light, just a silhouette at first, tall, wearing a hood. I couldn't see their face, but I saw the glint of something in their hand. A knife? A gun? I didn't wait to find out. I threw the lamp, aiming for their head. It missed, smashing against the wall, but it gave me a second to grab a knife from the counter. Max was going wild, snapping at the air, and the figure hesitated, like they hadn't expected me to fight back. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," they said, and I hated how calm they sounded, like they were scolding a kid. "Get out!" I yelled, my voice cracking. "The cops are coming!" It was a lie, but I hoped it'd scare them. It didn't. They took another step, and Max went for them, all teeth and fury. I heard a yell, a thud, and I ran forward, knife raised, ready to do whatever it took to protect us. But before I could, headlights flooded the room, bright, blinding, cutting through the dark. It was Ruiz. She burst in, gun drawn, shouting, "Drop it! Now!" The figure froze, caught between Max and her, and for a second I thought it was over. Then they bolted, diving through the broken window like a shadow. Ruiz fired, but they were gone, swallowed by the night. Max tried to chase, but I grabbed his collar, pulling him back. I wasn't losing him too. Ruiz was on her radio, calling for backup, her face a mix of anger and guilt. "You okay?" she asked, checking me over. I nodded, but I wasn't. My hands were shaking, the knife still clenched so tight my knuckles hurt. Max pressed against me, whining, and I realized he was limping. Blood on his fur, not much, but enough to make my heart stop. "He's hurt," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Ruiz helped me check him, a shallow cut on his leg, probably from the glass. We bandaged it best we could, waiting for the other cops to show up. They searched the house, the yard, but the figure was long gone. All they found was a glove, dropped by the window, and a symbol scratched into the frame. A circle with a slash through it, like the one I'd seen in Tom's journal. Ruiz didn't sugarcoat it this time. "This is bigger than we thought," she said, her voice low so the other cops wouldn't hear. "That symbol, it's old, tied to the group we're chasing. They're not just a bunch of creeps. They've got rules, structure, and they don't like loose ends." "Loose ends?" I snapped. "You mean me?" She didn't answer, but her silence said enough. I was a problem now. Someone who'd seen too much fought back too hard. They weren't done with me. They moved me again to a new safe house, this one farther away, in a city where I didn't know the streets. Max got stitches, and the vet said he'd be fine, but I couldn't stop blaming myself. He'd saved me again, and it cost him. I spent nights watching him sleep, his chest rising and falling, wondering how much more we could take. The cops kept digging, and Ruiz kept me in the loop, though I could tell she was holding back. They'd arrested more people. Lisa was one of them. She'd been feeding them info, telling them when I was in town, what I was doing. She cried when they questioned her, said she didn't know it'd go this far, that she was just following orders. Orders from who? She wouldn't say, or maybe she didn't know. Mrs. Larson was questioned too, but she claimed she was just trying to warn me, not help them. I didn't buy it. Her warnings were too vague, too convenient. The group, whatever it was, went back decades, maybe longer. Ruiz found records of missing people tied to that symbol, not just in Pine Hollow, but in towns nearby. It was like a network, quiet, hidden, picking off people who wouldn't be missed, or people who fought back, like me. They called themselves the Keepers, according to one of Tom's journals. Keepers of what? Secrets? Power? I didn't know, and part of me didn't want to, but I couldn't let it go. I started researching again, using a laptop Ruiz got me, digging into anything I could find. Old forums, police reports, even conspiracy threads. Most of it was noise, but some of it lined up. Stories of towns with watchers, people who vanished after asking too many questions. The Keepers weren't just in Pine Hollow. They were everywhere, and I'd stumbled into their web. I was angry, angrier than I'd ever been. They'd taken my home, my peace, my trust. I wanted to burn it all down, expose them, make sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. But I was also scared. Scared they'd find me again. Scared I'd never feel safe. Max sensed it, sticking closer than ever, his eyes watching every door, every window. Then one day, Ruiz showed up with news. They'd caught someone. Not the figure from the safe house, but someone higher up. A woman who'd been running things in Pine Hollow. She wouldn't talk, but they'd found a list in her house. Names crossed off, mine included. Next to my name was that symbol again, and a word. Failed. Failed what? Their test? Their game? I didn't care. I was alive, and that was enough. But the woman's arrest didn't end it. Ruiz said there were others, people they hadn't found, and I knew I'd never really be free until they were gone. I made a choice then. I wasn't running anymore. I'd help Ruiz, help the cops, however I could. I'd tell my story, every detail, no matter how much it hurt. I'd make sure the world knew about the Keepers, about Pine Hollow, about the people who thought they could play God with my life. Max was with me, my partner in this fight, and together, we were unstoppable. It's been months since that night in the safe house, and I'm still here, still fighting. I moved to a new city, a big one, where the noise drowns out the silence I used to love. I work remotely, keep to myself, but I'm not hiding. I'm writing, sharing what happened, hoping it reaches someone who needs to hear it. The cops are still investigating, and Ruiz checks in sometimes, though I can tell she's tired. The Keepers are quiet for now, but I know they're out there, waiting. Max is older, greyer, but he's still my rock. He saved me, not just from the woods, from Tom, from that figure in the dark, but from giving up. Every day I look at him and think, if he can keep going, so can I. I don't trust easily anymore. Don't smile at strangers, but I trust him. That's enough. I think about Pine Hollow sometimes, the cabin, the forest. It was supposed to be my fresh start, and in a way it was. It showed me who I am when the world falls apart. I'm not the girl who moved there, naive and hopeful. I'm stronger, sharper, and I'm not afraid to fight. The Keepers thought they could break me, but they didn't, and they never will. So what about you? Ever had a moment where the truth hit you like a freight train? Where you had to choose, run or stand and fight? I made my choice. What's yours?